And I think what we're seeing is that residential demand is picking back up, and installers are getting ready to sell into the market again. Sure.
But they focus on one or two geographies. They do really good work, have a really good reputation there, and not trying to grow too fast.
Yeah.
That's what I've seen. Have you seen anything similar?
That there will be something that fails, and most likely it's going to be an inverter problem or something that's going to happen down the line. And you want to make sure that the company that installed it or the salesperson that sold it to you is responsible for helping you out when that happens.
What are your take on the ecosystems that are available out there? All right, welcome to a special edition of the Solar Surge podcast. We are broadcasting live from the Power Up Live stage at RE Plus in partnership with Suncast Media. And this morning I'm joined by Ben Zientara from Solar Reviews.
Hey.
Ben, good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
And we're going to be talking about solar industry news and trends for 2024.
Sounds great.
Well, Ben, unfortunately, some of the biggest news for our industry this year was the solar business failures. So I guess let's jump into that first.
Yeah, for sure.
Number of high-profile business failures, whether you're talking about Titan Solar, Pink Energy Power Home, or ADT acquiring SunPro just to shut the business down in 2 years. So
yeah.
What's your take on the state of the residential solar installer business and some of these high-profile failures that we've seen in 2023, 2024?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as of a couple of years ago, we've seen a definite decrease in demand. Not demand for solar, but what residential customers will expect. And so we've seen a decrease in demand because of that. And that means that if a company isn't executing as well as it possibly can, then they're going to fail. We've definitely seen, ADT was very aggressive in moving into markets like Oklahoma and Kansas and these places that aren't traditionally known as bastions of good residential solar policy. So you end up, trying to fill in what you can at the margins. And if you can't sell at the right price and homeowners don't do well, then the word spreads and you don't end up selling much at all. But I think demand is there and it's actually returning now. We're at the end of 2024 or near the end, and interest rates should be going down soon. Jerome Powell seems to think that interest rates are going to go down very soon. I just saw a report that we're at the lowest level of inflation since 2021, so it's good to hear. And I think what we're seeing is that residential demand is picking back up, and installers are getting ready to sell into the market again.
Yeah. And maybe part of it is that we had things so good for so long. I mean, I know when I got into the industry in 2012, we knew nothing but year-over-year growth for the entire decade following that. And it was significant growth, I think 50% at least year-over-year for the entire decade. Then we get hit with higher interest rates. On top of that, higher financing fees, and that's something we can dig more into as well.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's definitely gotten more expensive to finance solar. And then for the first time in over a decade, we saw sales slowing down. And it seems like a lot of the companies that weren't ready for that ended up falling by the wayside.
Yeah, I think what we saw is that companies just grew so quickly and spread themselves out so much that when operational things weren't in place, they couldn't handle the downturns.
Yep. So do you think we've seen the worst of it now?
I certainly hope so. I think we probably have. From what we know from our clients is that they're getting, like I said, they're getting ready to turn back on campaigns and getting ready to get out there again. I think we haven't seen the end of closures. I think you mentioned today to me that we've just seen more recent closures of big solar companies, big solar residential companies. But I certainly think, like I said, the demand is there. Electricity isn't getting any cheaper from the grid. So there's always reasons to get away from that as much as possible as a homeowner.
Sure. One of the things we do at Solar Surge, we travel around, we meet with solar contractors around the country, particularly here in California, because we want to share with the audience what are the companies that are finding success in today's environment, what are they doing differently than even some of these larger companies that we thought we were having a lot of success, and then they end up going out of business. One of the things I've noticed is that some of the smaller regional companies, they're not necessarily in every single market, and they're not trying to be everything to everybody, but they focus on one or two geographies. They do really good work, have a really good reputation there, and not trying to grow too fast.
Yeah.
That's what I've seen. Have you seen anything similar?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we've seen especially is that vertically integrated residential companies do really well. Those who employ their own salespeople, they employ their own service teams, they're able to maintain that relationship with their customers over the long run, and not just their customers, but the relationship with the AHJs in their local communities and the inspectors, and they kind of know exactly what to expect, and they can smooth things out or make sure things run streamlined. I think for too long the people in the residential industry have kind of given out this message that solar is a zero maintenance product, and once you put it on your roof, it's going to work forever. And that's obviously not true. There will be something that fails, and most likely it's going to be an inverter problem or something that's going to happen down the line. And you want to make sure that the company that installed it or the salesperson that sold it to you is responsible for helping you out when that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've said this so many times, I feel like a broken record, but solar is not one of these things that you just buy it off the shelf and, you put it on and you're done with it. You never deal with the contractor again.
Yeah.
With solar, you're essentially investing in a 25-year relationship with that contractor. So this is not something you want to go shopping on cheapest price. The question you really need to ask yourself is this the contractor, is this the company that I have the most confidence in being a good long-term partner over the entire 25 years of that system?
Yeah, for sure. And even though we might see like a solar module on the roof should be just fine for 25 years. But again, if the installation was done poorly because it was a subcontracted work crew that wasn't invested in making sure that the business has a long-term staying power, or if it was roof penetrations that weren't done correctly, or an inverter that wasn't installed correctly, then you end up with problems down the line, and you want someone to help take care of that.
And especially with today's technology, because one of the things I'm seeing here too is solar is not just an individual stovepipe system anymore, and it's not just about slapping as much glass on the roof as possible.
Yeah.
These systems are becoming complex and highly integrated, including in many cases solar, battery storage, electric vehicle charging, smart home energy management, automatic load control. And the contractor's got to be able to manage all of that complexity and make sure all those different systems can talk well to each other. Again, it's just not one of those things you want to be thinking on a cheapest price basis. It's a lot of complexity and risk to manage.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said many times, is that we used to pair whatever modules with whatever inverter and have it happen now. But these companies manufacturing companies are moving toward a platform of products that all do work together and talk together. And then installers get to choose one of those platforms and kind of work within that ecosystem. And you got companies like Enphase that does everything but the glass. And then other companies that are doing everything and the glass, and from like especially with the Q cells, you've got the modules on the roof, you got the inverter, or in this case, they've got their new AC modules that tie right into their combiner box. They told me today they're going to have a new AC battery coming out next year that's going to work with that. So that's pretty cool to have everything in one stop. If you need warranty support, you're going to get it from one point and not have to go chasing around a manufacturer that might not exist anymore.
So what are your thoughts on the different ecosystems that are available out there now? I know just this week I've had a chance to take a look at Q cells. I've had a chance to take a brief look at Solar Edge.
Yeah.
Generac has rolled out a new generation battery energy storage system as well. So what are your take on the ecosystems that are available out there?
Well, I think it's interesting to see that there aren't a lot of new products. You see people are just refining the designs. Where you got like Franklin WH they doubled the power of the A-Power, they doubled the power output and increased the storage capacity. That's cool, but it's not a brand new radical reinvention of it. It's really just about refining and making sure that you can address the needs of people really well. As far as ecosystems, you got the old guard, which is the Enphase, and then you got the newer ones. You just covered Point Guard in one of your videos, and I talked to their CEO this week. I think that's a really cool. He called it a platform and not a product, where it's really a design that's meant to enable people to have like a legacy products. If you need to change out a battery module in 10 years, that you can do that with this product because it's designed to think about the future, and that's really cool.
Yep. A lot of exciting technology out there, and of course we're going to be covering that and seeing where this goes.
Yeah.
One of the other trends that we're seeing here this week is this move towards made in USA and domestic content.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit to that? Why do you think Made in USA is so important right now? I haven't really remembered hearing this much in the past, as this real focus on U.S. manufacturing.
Yeah, absolutely. So at Solar Reviews, we produce a yearly top 10 list of solar module manufacturing brands, solar battery brands, and one of our ranking criteria for those brands is whether they've committed to manufacturing in the U.S. Obviously, with the IRA a couple of years ago, that became much more important. But I think we're actually kind of in a tenuous position with that because we've seen module manufacturers are saying we're going to do the best we can to employ people and refine our processes and create a competitive product here for the market. But it's even with tariffs that exist right now, it's still hard to make money as a domestic module manufacturer. So the idea is you either size up, scale up, get your DOE grant or your LPO loan guarantee, and then make sure you execute, extremely well on that front. But I guess the future will tell, whether we see new tariffs or an extension of the existing tariffs to protect manufacturers who've committed to the market, and I'm hoping we do.
Great, great. Well, Ben, I understand that you and the team at Solar Reviews have just completed a survey where you've got some insights to share with us about some of the companies and some of the brands that are going to be manufacturing and what sort of some of the market share looks like now.
Yeah.
Where would you like to start? You want to talk about batteries, solar modules, inverters?
Yeah, let's talk about modules a little bit. That's where I'm most comfortable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm looking at the notes here from your all's report. It looks like Q-Cells has still got a solid number one position in terms of module market share, followed by REC and Canadian Solar. Kind of walk us through it if you can.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is our annual survey where we get responses from hundreds of real solar installers around the country. We ask them to tell us, what modules they used in their installations in the last year, and obviously most of these installers are carrying multiple brands of modules. In the past, we've seen a lot that Q-Cells is obviously the dominant player in the residential space. I think they have something like 25 or 30% market share in the residential space. But often an installer will offer both Q-Cells and REC as like a better, best, kind of option to a homeowner, whether you want that extra, little 1% of efficiency in the module or whatever. But yeah, I think another thing we look at is a company's financial performance. So we want to make sure that manufacturers are open about their financials. If you're a publicly traded company, you have to make financial reports. And so we want to see that you're growing revenue, that you are continuously, executing, that you're bringing that to the bottom line, and that kind of stuff. So our top 10 list, I think, for 2024, we saw Q-Cells at the top, and then Silfab number 2, because we feel like Silfab does the best job of serving the residential market and also being a domestic manufacturer. They've got some of the most history manufacturing domestically. Number 3, I can't recall off the top of my head. I think it's either JA Solar or Canadian Solar. These are big, huge companies who have growing revenues. They're so large that I don't want to say too big to fail, but they're big enough that they're diversified enough that they've for sure going to be able to serve the market for a long time to come. And so we think that's important to know that manufacturer is going to be there, standing by their products for the next 2-3 decades or more.
Absolutely. Yeah, one of the things I appreciate what Solar Reviews does is, and a lot of what we do at Solar Surge too, is we try to help the consumer cut through a lot of the noise that's in the marketplace and focus on what we feel are the top choices that they ought to be considering if they're looking to go solar on their home. I've noticed a lot of noise, particularly on the battery side of things and also on the inverter side of things. What are some of your top picks in terms of home batteries and inverters that are available?
Yeah, absolutely. So for 2024, we named the Enphase 5P the top battery. Again, that has a lot to do with Enphase just being such a successful company. They've proven that they can execute long-term strategy. The product is excellent. It stacks in series, so you're increasing your power output and your energy storage capacity as you add modules, and that's really cool. I know that I've seen your video about the Enphase 5P and how you're running conduit between each battery, and sometimes can look a little bit messy. And so there's other manufacturers that have a much more clean appearance with a stackable modular battery and something. I think the Tesla Powerwall 3 is really the one to beat, and that's what I'm hearing from battery manufacturers on the floor, is that's the one that they're trying to compete with. They're saying we can fit more capacity in the same area as a Tesla Powerwall, or we can have more power output as a Tesla Powerwall, because they know that that's the brand to shoot for. I think that's largely because, you mentioned earlier how the things seem to be getting more complicated, that where the ecosystems are growing in complexity. But there's also this trend toward, I think, making things simple for installers. I think Powerwall 3 does that the absolute best, and Tesla's new railless mounting system is also really cool, where it just makes things such a simple process for an installer to go in there, put your lag bolts in the rafters, get the modules on the roof, and then run everything right into the MPPTs in the Powerwall 3. And they're also executing really well on price. I think that's the one that everyone wants to beat. Is like, it's $9,000 for a Powerwall, and that's a pretty excellent price.
It is. It is a very competitive price. And again, with the Powerwall 3, it's not just the battery. It's the battery and it's the solar inverter as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm glad you touched on that ease of installation, because I think something that was left out of the conversation with the first and second generation batteries, a lot of these batteries looked great on paper in terms of their capabilities. Yeah. But when you talk to the installers in the field, fumbling through their first handful of installations, you realize that these batteries were very unprofitable for the installer to handle.
Yeah,
and I think Powerwall did a great job in kind of simplifying that and eliminating a lot of the noise there.
Yeah, for sure. I was at Intersolar this year in January, and well, I shouldn't name names, but we saw batteries that take 2 or 3 hours to wire up when you're setting modules inside of a cabinet. But if you have an installer or an electrician in this case, a really expensive electrician, spending 3 hours wiring up a single battery, you're really wasting a lot of time and money on that installation that the homeowner then has to bear.
Right.
But if you got installers that can sell a system that's so simple to install, it's either stacks up from the floor and it's a very simple conduit run to connect your solar into it, or it stacks together and there's no wiring whatsoever, no dip switches to set, none of that complexity.
Yep. Final thing here, Ben, before we're out of time, what are some of the policy and political considerations that folks need to be aware of now as we're going into 2025?
Yeah, absolutely. I think obviously we've seen net metering taken away in California. Other states have been working on that too. But I think predominantly now, residential solar is really taking a black eye from the public perception standpoint. So you see stories on NPR and stories from CBS and ABC affiliates from across the country about somebody who got solar installed in their house that they paid $70,000 for it and it doesn't work and the company's out of business. So I think consumer protection is going to be one of the biggest trends going forward. We've already seen laws passed in Washington and Utah in the past year. I think I just heard from the Colorado Solar and Storage Association that they're going to be working on a consumer protection law in Colorado, and I'm hopeful that I can be a part of helping to advise how that works, because we need solar industry voices there that also can demand that some of the worst practices in our industry get curbed before it just becomes a rotten apple that spoils the whole barrel.
Yeah. Well, I guess one little bit of silver lining is that some of these companies that were engaged in doing these deceptive practices at a large scale, a lot of these companies have gone out of business now. So
yeah, absolutely.
I do think we are going to be a more resilient, stronger industry that emerges from this little bit of a slowdown that we're in.
Yeah.
But the loss of net metering is a real trend, right?
Yeah.
And for many years, it has sort of been as goes policy here in California, the rest of the nation follows. Now, where I live on the East Coast, we're still somewhat spoiled. We still have one-for-one net metering in a lot of the markets there.
Yeah.
But I think for many of us to kind of read the writing on the wall that it looks like one-for-one net metering will be going away at some point, and that's why battery storage is such a big part of the conversation now, truly being energy self-sufficient and using the utility as a last resort only.
Yeah, absolutely. And I live in Portland, Oregon, where electricity rates have gone up, I think, 40% in the past few years, and they're going to go up again quite soon. And then I've heard that PGE, Portland General Electric, is pushing to take away net metering too. So it's definitely a trend around the country, and it's something that that's why we're seeing, I think, this push toward streamlined battery installations, where if you can do it in a profitable way, but also in a way where customers can afford it from the get-go, that you can immediately replace the most of the grid power that you're getting in your house just with that simple installation.
Yep, I think you're absolutely right. And again, with the Powerwall 3 and other products that are competing in that category, now home solar with storage is affordable, feasible for the contractor, and financially within reach for the homeowner.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Well, Ben, anything else you'd like to share with the audience here before we close out today's podcast?
No, I think that's everything. I think we covered everything really well.
Great. Well, folks, this has been a special edition of the Solar Surge podcast, broadcasting here live from RE Plus on the Power Up Live stage in partnership with Suncast Media. Ben, thanks for spending some time with us.
Absolutely, Joe. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
You got it. Enjoy the rest of the show.
All right, you too. Take care.